Hello everybody, this video is just to demonstrate something that I did in a recent video of mine where I made music related to the game Minecraft, and all the instrumentals in that song were created using sound samples from the game itself. So in Minecraft there are these things called note blocks. They make musical sounds, and I took those and I pulled them into Logic into the sampler and made a bunch of instruments. So this little tutorial, I guess, if you want to call it that, is going to show you how to do that, and you could do that with any sound. It doesn't have to be Minecraft related at all. But yeah, some of this is coming from a video I saw by a YouTuber by the name of Andrew Huang, and he did something similar with sound samples in Abelton, and this is in Logic Pro 9. So if you wanted to know how to use the sampler in Logic Pro 9, this is how. So the first thing I'm going to do is find my sounds. So they're in my Minecraft folder. These are the sounds I want to use. They're under resources, new sound. There's actually a whole bunch of sound folders all over the place, but this is where the note blocks are. There are only really 3 instruments here. There's 2 sounds for the bass, 2 sounds for the, they call it a harp. I think it's supposed to be a harpsichord. It sounds like a piano kind of. And then there are 3 different progressive sounds. There's a bass, drum, snare, and hi-hat. And the hi-hat is really just a clicking sound. It's not even really a hi-hat. But these are the sounds I'm going to use, and I'm not going to use any other sounds at all. So these are OGG files, and I want them to be something that Logic likes, so I converted them into WAV files. So just as an example, I'm going to show you how I go about doing this. So first, I get my WAV file, and I got that by converting the OGG files in Audacity. You could have used any other program. So now I've dragged this into my program, and I have this little harp sound. Alright, that's cool. How do I turn this into an instrument? Well, I'm going to go into my sampler. This is the EXS24 sampler, and that is the sampler that comes with Logic. It's right here if you're looking for it. And if I open that up, by default it's set to a Steinway piano, so right, you can see that right there, or hear that rather. I'm going to set it to no instrument, and then I'm going to edit that instrument. So right now, if I drag something in here, it'll try to create a new instrument. Actually, I think it's already created a new instrument. Instrument number 1789. So this is a little blank slate where you can drag a file and bam! Now it's going to use this sound file to create an instrument. So right, and by default it will pitch shift up and down, and that's actually what Minecraft does. If you use note blocks in Minecraft, you know that you can get different pitches. It'll give you a whole chromatic scale, 12 different notes, and it does that not by having a whole bunch of different sound files for each pitch, but by actually pitch shifting, which is what the sampler will do. So it'll speed up or slow down that same sound file in order to get different pitches. So that's cool. But I want this to sound a little bit different. I want to do more with it, and I want to get more sustain on it. And to get more sustain, instead of just having this little staccato note, I'm going to loop it. So what I did was I went there so I could see this little loop function. I'm going to turn it on. So what it does by default is this. And what it's doing is it's playing that same sample file over and over again. And I don't want it to do that. I want it to play it and then hold it down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, instead of looping it from the very beginning all the way to the very end, right, from here to here, I'm going to loop just a tiny little section in the middle of that, right? So I want it to loop, if we look over here, I want it to loop like this or something. So it's not getting any of this silence at the beginning or end. So what I'm going to do is fix my viewing thing. I'm going to go over here, the start and end point. So right now it's starting at the beginning. I want it to start partway through. So let's just, I'm just going to type in these numbers, and I want it to end a little sooner. So I'm going to do that. And I think there might be a way to do that visually, like in the sample editor or something. I always do it in here. It works for me. But now it's going to sound like this. Da, 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 and it's going to repeat that small section in the middle, and that's not great because it kind of has this little clicking thing each time it cuts in or cuts out the loop. It kind of makes a little popping or clicking thing, which you don't really want. So what I'm going to do is add a crossfade. And now I get a bit more sustain. And that's cool. It actually makes a little bit of modulation when it fades in and fades out like that, which I like. It's kind of like an organ sound. But in some cases, I might actually not want, I'm not going to save that. I might not want to crossfade. So with this sound effect, I've added a bit of overdrive to these as well because the sound files I'm using are super quiet. They're really hard to hear. So with this bass saw, what I'm doing here is I didn't do that crossfade thing that I just did with the piano. Instead, I just took that, let's look at the loop. I took my loop and I made it really small. So the section I'm looping is so small that you just constantly hear it cutting in and cutting out, which sounds like this. Right? And it makes it kind of sound like a saw wave. If you're if you've used synthesizers before, that's what it's like. And this is all generated using the bass sound, and the regular bass sound just sounds like this. Right? So you can see how different it already is. And I can take that bass saw and I can add a pitch glide to it, right? And I can do all sorts of other things that you can do in a synthesizer, all playing around with this. And this is actually the sound that I use to make the dubstep wobble. So just by, I'll show you that when I get into the main thing, but yeah. So I've got all these kits, and for the drum kit, what I've done is, if we go into that sampler, I've taken those 3 sound files, the bass drum, snare, and hi-hat, and I'm not changing the pitch because I don't want to. I want to keep those sounds the way they are. And instead of having it so that each and every note will trigger those samples, I have it so that only these notes will. So this one plays the bass drum, this plays the snare, and this plays the hi-hat. Right, so everything within this range, which is just 1 key, will play this sound, and same for the other ones. And this configuration is pretty typical for drum kits. You have bass drum here, a snare here, and a hi-hat there. So I can just play it like this. And that's my drum kit. So let's just show you for a second how you can use this. Let's get rid of this guy. Some of these instruments to create a little loop and actually play a song. So here we go. Let's start with the drum kit. All right, I don't know if that's, whoops, I didn't mean to open that up. I don't know if that's in time, but let's just quickly use magic in order to make it in time. Bam. And let's get this loop going. Right there. Now we can add some bass. I'm going to use this right here. 2, 3, 4. Perfect, and then I'm going to add some chords. Let's use this one right here. Cool, and let's just loop that and we can do a little solo over it. So you can see we started off with just some really simple sounds that had no sustain. They didn't have different pitches, and now we have a bunch of instruments that we can use to make a real song. So that's pretty cool, I think. Let's go over to a new thing. Let's close this. Let's not save it. And this is the project file for the Minecraft rap song. Hopefully I've come up with a title for it before I upload it. I don't know. Anyway, so I have my vocal files, right? So that, obviously, that came from my mouth, not from Minecraft. But everything else here is the sampler playing some kind of something that came from a Minecraft sound. So, right, you can hear the Minecraft drum kit here. I have the bass here. I have the harp or the keyboard here. The wobble was... Right, that was the bass saw that we played a second ago, and all I've done to make it wobble is used automation to automate the this LFO, this low frequency oscillator, to change the cutoff. I'm selected on the wrong thing. Here we go. There we go, and you can see how it's changing the cutoff with the LFO, and that's how I'm getting that wobble 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 thing. And I'm not really much of an electronic music person, so I only assume that's how you're supposed to do that. It's the first time I've ever made a wub, so that sounds funny when you say that. And this one, I took that Minecraft, that harp thing, and I added a bit crusher and a rotor to it, and I thought that was kind of cool. It made it into sort of a synth pad, and the bit crusher, it's sort of, I mean, it's video game music, right? So you want to use a bit crusher somewhere. Yeah, and I'm just using those instruments that I already showed you, and I'm adding a couple different effects to them. There's one that I made sound kind of a little more like an organ. I had to bounce that out for some reason. That's why it looks different. But yeah, that's basically it. That's how you take sound samples, and I just realized I've been facing away from the mic, so hopefully the audio for this is not horrible. That's how you take sound samples and turn them into a whole bunch of different kinds of instruments. So hopefully you found this somewhat interesting or useful, and thank you for watching. That is all. Goodbye.